Happy Halloween, everybody. Hope you're doing well. If you are a fan of the spooky day, hope it went well. If you dressed up, all that fun stuff with your kids. I'm not a big Halloween guy. It's probably hard to figure out, hard to pencil in, but it's come and gone. Kids get their treats. We move on. November is upcoming. It's already tomorrow. It's almost the end of 2023, which is crazy. But November 1st is actually a day I really like because November 1st was the day that I picked up my little pooch named Dirk. And I think people call it a gotcha day or something. Don't really know. Don't like that. I think that's kind of an Instagram term. But my gotcha day, it's the day I brought her home. So November 1st is a good day for me. But happy Halloween. Best costume for Halloween, I'd have to go with the Joker because I love the Joker. To me, he's the greatest villain in cinematic history. And at times he's not really a villain, but again, that's a hot take. We won't go into that tonight. That's a whole other topic. Could be a tattoo at some point one day for yours truly. But I like the Joker. I went with my roommates as the three guys from the movie Pineapple Express when we were in university. If you're familiar with that film, if you're not, watch it after this podcast, but watch it tonight because it's a great movie. McLovin would be fun from Superbad. Dalen Brennan from Step Brothers. But yeah, Halloween, come and gone. Great. Tonight, number of things to talk about. The NFL trade deadline was today. Going to talk about what happened, what teams should have did. Ads, a trade that to me makes zero sense, and a mistake that a team made last year, they're doubling down on today. Plus, how's Devontae Adams feeling now that he's still a Las Vegas Raider after having one catch for 11 yards last night on Monday Night Football? World Series 2-1 for the Texas Rangers. Game 4 tonight. Adolis Garcia not in the starting lineup. Max Scherzer's also banged up. So it could be some potential openings for Arizona to get back in this. Big UFC Fight Night card in December announced last night by Dana White. So we'll get into that today. And also, James Harden is now a member of the Los Angeles Clippers. Finally. Why did it take so long and why is it happening now? We'll talk about all that. But to start the show, it's the last day of October. And I kind of want to get into the winners. My winner for the month. That's what we're going to do in the NHL throughout the year. Just the winner of each month. Doesn't have to be the best team in the league. It's not going to be every month because it isn't today. But I'm going to look at the month and say, who was good? Who was better than I expect them to be? Who kind of jumped off the page? And they'll get that accolade from me. And I'm watching games last night. There's a lot of hockey. Flipping through, watching the Rangers go 7-2 in the month, which was really impressive. Didn't expect them to play this good. Got to give credit where credit's due. Artemi Panarin is one of the best players in the league right now, much to my chagrin. That'll quickly fade come game 1 of the playoffs, but hey, it's not the playoffs yet, so he's playing great hockey. So Benajad's great. They're getting good goaltending. Keandre Miller looks even better than he was last year. So the Rangers are good. And they win a game in Winnipeg with Blake Wheeler making his return. It's a big win there in a great month. There's obviously the Bostons of the world. You got Vegas, who we're going to talk about today, but that's not my answer. To me, the winner of October, for the month of October, is the Anaheim Ducks. And I'm going to clarify it again. This is 1 month. Do I believe the Anaheim Ducks are going to make the playoffs? Probably not. But they were a team that I had circled saying, you have no hope. You're done from the beginning, and you'll battle with the likes of San Jose and Chicago, maybe even Arizona as the worst teams in the NHL. But then you go and watch Anaheim, and Boston has one loss in the season. Anaheim gave it to them. Anaheim goes in, beats the Florida Panthers this month. They beat the Pittsburgh Penguins in Pittsburgh. They beat the Flyers in Philadelphia. On a 4-game Eastern road trip, they go 3-0-1. The Anaheim Ducks have a new number one goaltender, Lukas Dostal. To me, he's the new number one guy there, John Gibson. It's tough for him because Anaheim ruined all his confidence in the last 3 to 4 years where they played no defense in front of him. The team didn't even try, and the team was flat out god-awful. But they're better, and Lukas Dostal looks pretty damn good. But beyond all of that, the Anaheim Ducks are playing a style of hockey that is competitive, and you're starting to see players jump off the page. And I talked about this briefly yesterday, but Mason McTavish is the biggest example to me. Mason McTavish, big centerman, was a great junior player, went to the Memorial Cup final in St. John, New Brunswick for the Hamilton Bulldogs, was the captain of the World Junior team in the summer tournament in Edmonton, Alberta, which I attended. Obviously a top 5 pick in the draft, but he was a little underwhelming. But in the past 4 games, he has 9 points. He scored the game-winning goal shorthanded last night for the Ducks. And he's starting to play both ends of the ice, more responsible, more clutch, just looks like a damn good player, like we all thought he would be coming out of junior. But it's not only Mason McTavish, Frank Vetrano, who at one point was a throw-in piece to the New York Rangers just to make the playoffs and see what they can do. The season they went to the conference final 2 years ago now. In the month of October, he has 9 goals in 9 games, which is tops in the league. More goals than Austin Matthews, who had 6 goals in his first 2 games. More goals than David Pastrnak. More goals than Travis Konechny, who's another really quiet surprise with 8 goals in the month of October. But the Anaheim Ducks didn't have any fight. They didn't have any life. You didn't care. They won a game last night that they had no business winning. Pittsburgh Penguins had a 5-on-3 for the last 2 minutes, and yet the Anaheim Ducks killed it off and then score a goal shorthanded with 11 seconds left. But to add to this, they have fight, they have a reason, they have a purpose. Greg Cronin, their head coach, was pissed off with a call last night. Went to video review on a goal challenge, which, as you all know, if you listen to me even 5 seconds, I think video review is about as good as, Justin Trudeau, which is fucking useless. So video review comes in. They say they get the call right, but who knows anymore? And they signal a goal for Pittsburgh. I don't think it should have been. And obviously, that means that Anaheim, they're down 3-2, and Greg Cronin gets tossed. He's heated. He's giving it to the officials, and he gets ejected from the game. That never happens. Happens in baseball. Aaron Boone did it every other day this season, but you don't see it that often in hockey. But first-year coach Greg Cronin comes in, has a purpose, is setting a tone, and this team has battled in the first month. They've showed heart. They are a better team currently than the Edmonton Oilers. They are a better team currently than the Calgary Flames, than the Vancouver Canucks. They're in the mix with the Los Angeles Kings. That's who they are alongside currently. They have played that good of hockey after 1 month, and it's only 1 month, but that's what we're judging here. Sometimes to build something, to build a program, to build the next wave, you need a sign. You need something to show that we can. We believe that we can come out the other side and be like we were when we had Ryan Getzlaf and Corey Perry and Scott Niedermayer and Chris Pronger, Teemu Selanne. They haven't had that in nearly a decade in Anaheim. They've been a bad team after bad team, year after year, playing hockey with little to no fans, no pulse. And the best thing you have to wrap around your finger is Trevor Zegras scoring a Michigan goal, and who gives a shit? Because the rest of his game sucks. Great. One of our guys scored the Michigan. Let's sell it. Let's live on that for the next couple of years. I don't know about you. I'd rather live on winning. I'd rather live on championships, on making the playoffs, on anything other than a Michigan goal. But you're starting to see life. You're starting to see momentum build. And that's what the Ducks need to do. It's going to be tough to sustain this, certainly. But they do have good players. And they have that momentum and they have that belief. And there's a different aura with the team. But I'm impressed, and I realize you might not see them play every night because they play out west. It's a lot of 11 o'clock starts. But take my word for it, they're playing good hockey. They have good players. I like the way their coach handles business. I might like him because I do the same thing with video review. To me, it's the dumbest thing ever. And seeing that cost you a game, potentially cost you a game, has to be frustrating. But they're on a long road trip and you're playing Pittsburgh on a Monday night and you go and win that game. That's impressive. Now, Arizona's been better than I thought in the month of October. They've been good. They're over 500. They crushed Chicago last night. Boston nearly won this for me. 9 games in October and Boston's 8-0-1. I can't believe it. It's a massive surprise. They played Florida last night. Florida's banged up. We all know this. They're going to be banged up for a while, and they get even more banged up because Sam Bennett hurt himself, left the game, and Oliver Ekman-Larsson took a high hit from Charlie McAvoy. And just minutes before I went live here, Charlie McAvoy was suspended 4 games for the hit, meaning Charlie McAvoy will not be playing for the Boston Bruins when they play the Toronto Maple Leafs on Thursday night, which is a big break for the Leafs. But no Krejci, no Bergeron, and to not have a regulation loss in the month of October, and they are on a better start than they were last year when they had the best regular season in NHL history, is quite something. It's staggering. It's hard to believe that they are this good. Jeremy Swayman, undefeated in the month, has one of the best save percentages. They have the best tandem by numbers in the NHL. Both guys are playing lights out. You can go one night, we're going with Swayman. Next night, we're going with Ullmark, and you feel just as good about both of them. Now, it's not going to be this easy all year. They will have their moments where they struggle, because every team does, and I still believe that their team is lacking depth, and their center ice position will come back to hurt them. But there's a team in Alberta that is not very good, and you're already seeing that they're starting to panic. Maybe Boston can scoop up a centerman with the last name Lindholm. Just thinking. If that team continues to struggle, I'm not going to tell you what the team is. I think you know what the team I'm talking about. It's not the Oilers. So if that team struggles, maybe Boston makes a call and you make a trade. Something, I don't know, maybe it happens. Maybe it doesn't. Who knows? Something to ponder moving forward. But Pavel Zacha gets the overtime winner. And Matthew Poitras, the kids look phenomenal. He's only 19. He looks good. And you had the head coach say today he's sticking around. He's not going anywhere. So he's a youngster unlike Fraser Minton, who's staying in the NHL for the rest of the year. You still have Zach Benson in Buffalo. They need to make a decision. Bedard's not going anywhere. Leo Carlson, Fantilli. Still some young players going to hit the Korchinski in Chicago. I don't think he's going anywhere. I think he's playing the rest of the year because their defense doesn't have many better options than Korchinski, even at his young age. And I don't think Junior's going to help him. He needs the NHL minutes. I will say for Boston, I like their AHL team, though. They have a kid down there, Fabian Wagner, Fabian Lysell, another player who I think is going to be an NHLer at some point. Has a whole lot of talent. He's not big, but he's got a great skill set overall. But they keep two good goalies, and it's helped them to this point in their first 10-game stretch. And their defense is still very good. Obviously, McAvoy's going to be out, but to McAvoy, when he's 100%, he's one of the best defensemen in the NHL, period. Period, end of story. He's one of the best. Just making the right play, physical, not fun to play against, move the puck, just meat and potatoes. But meat and potatoes wins you championships. That's what he does very well. And I watched last night because I was curious watching the Bruins. They play Florida. I thought Florida should have won that game. Barkov had a hell of a night. And it's funny because Florida went to the Stanley Cup final last year, and I don't think he was good at all during the postseason, quite frankly. I thought he could have been a hell of a lot better. If he played better, they could have won the Stanley Cup. Wasn't involved enough, wasn't strong, doesn't like to be physical in the corner. He played a game last night where he was just a force. He's a load, he's a seismic shift when he wants to be because there's so few players in the league like Sasha Barkov. But you have to have that willingness to do it and be engaged night in, night out. And I do believe Barkov has missed Huberdeau, and obviously Huberdeau has missed the sunshine in South Florida and his running mate Sasha Barkov following his 115-point season. And now he looks lucky to hit 50 every year. He looks completely lost, but that's another story for another day. But Florida played well, and Bobrovsky made some saves, and they moved the puck, and they had some tough circumstances because Bennett goes out, and Ekman Larson left the game, and you're still in it, and it goes to overtime, and you end up losing the game. But David Pastrnak is a player for me that I always heard this from friends and just people I talk to about people I talk hockey with. David Pasternak's relying on this player, or David Pasternak's a one-trick pony, or all he's got is a great shot. It's the furthest thing from the truth. He is one of the most dynamic, smart players in the league. First of all, he's a great passer. But I don't know, maybe Nikita Kucherov, and I'm not being hyperbolic here, on having the ability, having the wherewithal to know where the open space on the ice is going to be and finding that open space. They have the puck over here. I'm going to creep down or I'm going to move here, and the defense is not going to be able to recover. It's in the back of the net. And he's not with Bergeron. Bergeron has hung up the skates. Marchand's been good, but again, he hasn't been as productive in past years. Pastrnak still is that guy. And he might be a winger, but he's incredibly productive. He's incredibly smart. He still looks fantastic. Both those players look great last night for me. I think Florida's going to be a playoff team. They need some health to come back, and they need some stuff to break their way. And injuries are hurting them going that far in the postseason. Not lost on me. Boston's 8-0-1, losing in the first round. And you have Florida make the Stanley Cup final, and they lose that game. Vegas, 9-0-1. 10 games in October, no regulation losses. And their only loss on the season is to Chicago Blackhawks, if you can believe that. They are just something else. I don't think they had a beer all summer because there's no hangover. They want to kick your ass, they'll kick your ass. We want to keep it close, we'll win it at overtime. We want to go to the gimmick, we'll beat you in the gimmick. They beat LA in the gimmick, and they beat Montreal in the gimmick last night. Logan Thompson, Aiden Hill, maybe the only tandem that could rival Boston so far. Stellar goaltending every night, always a chance to win. Their defense core is so big, physical. 4 lines that can come at you. I mean, you look at it, you go, well, Mark Stone, he doesn't have that great of stats. No, he doesn't. And he never will. None of these Vegas players will ever have stats that make you, wow, I can't believe this player. Or this guy is so good. That's why stats are misleading. Lead the league in points. Lead the league in goals. Doesn't guarantee you much. But like Jack Eichel. He's got 10 points in 10 games. Point per game pace, but I mean, if McDavid did that, it'd be a shit season. Chandler Stevenson, 8 points in 10 games. I love him. But Pietrangelo, I might only have 2 points in 5 games, but I'm going to log 25 minutes a game, which he does. Barbashev, 2 points in 10 games. But hey, we're winning. And I'll be good when I have to be, which is the playoffs. Marchessault. Get this. Vegas, 10 games, 9-0-1. Marchessault has 5 points. Would you believe that? Yet they're winning. William Carrier has more points than Barbashev on the season. It's a 4th liner. But they just can beat you any way you want to play. You want to get in a street fight with Vegas, they'll kick your ass. And it's tough to repeat. But can they? Absolutely. I picked Colorado. And I think Colorado's a dangerous team. They've hit the ditch a little bit lately, losing to Buffalo, and they lost to Pittsburgh on their road trip. But I'm not falling off their bandwagon yet. And I think they could very well get Patrick Kane in the month of November. Wait to see there. But could it happen? Absolutely. I also got to give props to the Montreal Canadiens, who I was reminded that I crushed. They're 5-2-2 after 9 games. Credit to Montreal. Credit to the Canadiens, who are ahead of the Maple Leafs in the standings. Ahead of Tampa. Ahead of Florida. Ottawa. Didn't see that in the month of October. They're in every game. Montembeau's been great. Jake Allen, a little sketch. But Montembeau's been good. They're an impressive team. They battle every night. That's what I'll give them. They're going to be a playoff team? No. But again, they're kind of like Anaheim. They're showing a new way that they can play, that they're going to be a tough out. Goal scoring from the entire team. I'm a big Cole Caulfield fan. He's a dynamic player. Matheson's been great quietly for them, coming over and logging big minutes, scoring some big goals over the first 9 games. And they've had some injuries too. I mean, Ottawa fans bitch about injuries. Look at Montreal, and they don't have the talent that you have. No Caden Gooley, and you lose Kirby Doc. I saw he had surgery today, obviously done for the season. They don't bitch. They just play games. They go into Vegas on a Monday night, and they get a point. That's a win for a team like Montreal. Ottawa would be an excuse why you lost the game. Oh, we didn't have this guy. Or Anlauer didn't give us a pep talk before the game. Or, oh, this, that, or the other. I like the Senators, but they bitch a ton down there. I'm seeing all these reports from them. This happened, and this happened. This is wrong, and this is... Get it together. God, what are you becoming, the Toronto... Are they writing these pieces so that they can rival the Toronto media for the most bullshit spewed per day? Is it just on my timeline that I got to read this stupid crap? Probably. Because they know I'll react to it. They got me. Hook, line, and sinker. Not going to get off hockey because I still have a take, but some breaking news here. With the Game 4 of the World Series starting in 40 minutes, the Texas Rangers are taking injured star outfielder Adolis Garcia and starter Max Scherzer off the World Series roster. The team announced Tuesday. This is via Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic. Replaced by Ezekiel Duran, who can play middle infield, play some outfield, and Brock Burke, who's a relief pitcher. So the AL Championship Series MVP is done for the postseason now, done for the World Series. Had the walk-off homer in Game 1, and Max Scherzer, the Warrior God, World Series champion, is also done for the rest of the series. So that's a huge shakeup for the Texas Rangers. They squeaked out a win last night. They're 9-0 in the postseason on the road, which is a staggering statistic. No losses on the road. That's hard to be that great, but they have been. But Adolis Garcia has been their number 4 hitter all postseason long. He's been there in the big moments. Evan Carter. Marcus Semien, who's their leadoff hitter, who did have a big hit last night, needs to start producing more. You know that Garcia's gone. Corey Seager's been fantastic. But look at those 3 guys, Evan Carter, Semien, Seager, and maybe a Mitch Garver that will need to be productive while Adolis Garcia is no longer available. Max Scherzer being gone is not that big of a deal. The reason I say that is Max Scherzer is a fringe starter at this point. He hasn't been a great postseason pitcher since the Nats won the World Series in 2019. When you go into a game and you think a guy can only give you 3 innings, that's not a starting pitcher. Well, maybe to the Blue Jays it is, but that in the world of reality, that's not a starting pitcher. So he's a long bullpen arm, basically. So you miss a bullpen arm that you would have had, but I don't think they trusted him. I don't think you want him on the mound in a potential Game 6 or a Game 7. But now he won't be available. So you have to overcome it. In tonight's game, it is Andrew Heaney going for Texas, who's not been good in the postseason. Six innings, 6 ERA. Against Joe Mantempley, another guy who's a long bullpen arm, 6 1/3, 4.30 ERA. So both guys haven't been great. We might see some runs scored tonight early on. I expect to see a heavy bullpen game for both teams. And I think that oddly favors Texas because they have Dane Dunning, they have Martin Perez, who are starters, who are converted into the bullpen that can give them more innings. Zach Gallen and Nathan Eovaldi will pitch tomorrow in a Game 5 that could potentially be a must-win for Arizona if they were to lose tonight. But that's the baseball update to this point. Back to hockey. Blake Wheeler returned to Winnipeg. I thought it was good. They had a crowd there last night, so that was good to see. Lots of Wheeler sweaters. He had lots of family. It ended ugly there, but he's one of the most important players in franchise history when they returned. Which is fair. I think he was beloved there. They bring the team back. He's the captain. They got to a conference final, and they didn't have the success they ultimately wanted. But he was a great guy. He lived in Winnipeg for a long time, which nobody wants to do, but he did it. And he played hard, being an American as well, again, to think about doing that for that period of time. Didn't end well. That wasn't all his fault. Some of that was the team's fault, Rick Bowness. But I'm glad he got a good round of applause and glad that he got a good reception coming home. And the Jets, they're playing good hockey, but they can't find a way to win games. They're missing something with that group. They're just missing a touch, missing another player in the bottom of their lineup that you like. A defense that you still don't really trust all that much. But I thought that was a good moment. Here's the last thing on hockey. I have a gripe. It's with overtime. Overtime is becoming not as bad as the shootout, but nearly as bad. Team wins the draw, and you just round and around and around and around. Let's keep the puck until the defenders run out of gas, and then they're out of gas, so we'll just take it to the net, try to score. Or, okay, our shift's done. We didn't get a shot on goal. Didn't get a good opportunity. We didn't want to shoot the puck, risk giving them the puck. So let's throw the puck back to the goaltender, or 1D will stay on while our two other guys change. And their guys can't get off because it's the long change in overtime because you switch ends. So then it's so bad. It's not a fun product. And it used to be fun because up and down the ice, run and gun, something happens. Like I said this last year, but there's certain teams, Edmonton Oilers, New York Rangers, even Toronto Maple Leafs, they should never lose in overtime. Ever. They should never lose in overtime because you have more skill, you're faster than the rest. Like Toronto losing to Nashville in overtime, that's criminal. How the fuck did that happen? Oh, I know. Nashville won the draw because David Kampf didn't win it, and then Matthews tried to cheat, and he got caught, and then it's in the back of the net. But it shouldn't happen. But the product's bad. The gimmick is already the worst thing in the sport, maybe other than those Oilers jerseys during the Heritage Classic the other night. That's the only thing that can maybe rival the gimmick when it comes to ugly. But I mean, come on. I don't think the NHL needs it. I would this is what you do. 5-on-5. 5 minutes. And if you tie, you get a point each. Something I've always advocated for. If you lose in particular in this fucking overtime, if you lose in overtime, you shouldn't get a point. Shouldn't. Because overtime has nothing to do with what the game just happened. It's nothing like the hockey that was just played. It's not entertaining. Circle and circle and circle. There's not even shot attempts because you're afraid to lose the puck. There's certain teams, Washington, who don't even try to score in overtime because they know they're good at the gimmick and they'll take their chances against their opponent. And they look at it and go, we're old. We don't have that much skill. We're slow. Let's just hold on to the puck and pray to God for 5 minutes. We don't give our opponent time and space to beat us. Next time you watch Washington, which you probably won't because it's not a good watch, but they do it. And they've won 3 games this year in the gimmick because their OT just stinks. Or another thing overtime now that's becoming more and more popular. Oh, let's call a penalty. There was a hook there. Let's give them a power play. Ugh. 4-on-3 power play in overtime. Barf. Like last night, just Tampa got hosed. That was not a penalty in overtime. They gave Seattle the power play. And I got no problem with Seattle. I like Seattle. But that game was an overtime game. It was probably going to the gimmick, and Seattle probably would have lost. Because I trust Kucherov to score and Braden Point to score in a gimmick more than Jared McCann and Eberle and, I don't know, Vince Dunn. Whoever the hell Hackstall would have went with. But something you're proud of. Oh, our product. This product is so good. It's going to be great. People love it. I don't think people love it anymore. Because it's not entertaining. You're waiting for it to end so you can move on. I may sound like a curmudgeon, but do you like overtime? Let me know in the comments. Do you like it? You might say, oh, I'm glad the game's over. Okay. I don't hate a tie. I would rather, and just going back to when I played, I would rather tie a game than lose a game in a gimmick or that 3-on-3. Just personally. And I'm not everybody, but I'll tell you, when you're playing in a game and you lose in a bleeping shootout, there's nothing more frustrating. Because you lost, and I would rather lose because one player on my team or myself made a mistake. But no, we lost because we couldn't beat the other team's goalie on a race down the ice. Gross. Do I think Gary Bettman will change it? No. But I saw on Twitter he's going on Pat McAfee tomorrow. That's smart. He should go on Pat McAfee. Saw Matthews was on it last week, and McAfee's having an NHL guest every week. Good on him for growing the game in the United States. Again, Pat McAfee, not my cup of tea, but I'm not his audience. Again, I'm 25, but I could be 55. I love Bill Maher, and I love old people. Rob Schneider's stand-up. I was watching that earlier. He had some good jokes. Some jokes that probably would not be received well by my age group, but I thought they were funny. I thought they were relevant. If you didn't know Rob Schneider still doing stand-up, he is. He's pretty good. If you don't know who Bill Maher is, look him up because he's had a pretty great career. And he's got a good podcast called Club Random where he talks to guests and smoke weed. And that's pretty good too. So, good for Bill Maher. But tonight in the National Hockey League, only 2 games. LA in Toronto. Little 8 o'clock start. It's a little weird. But I think it's an ESPN thing. You want an 8 o'clock start in the United States. There's NBA on TNT tonight. So you want to kind of pair that around the same time. Kings, Maple Leafs seeing the team with the best center ice in the NHL, LA. go up against Matthews and Marner and all the skill guys for the Leafs. Should be a fun game. And then you also have Predators and the Canucks. Predators obviously coming off that big win, and the Canucks have played some good hockey lately. Quinn Hughes is, talking about October, been one of the best players in the league alongside his brother and his other brother. Because that family's had a hell of a month to start the 2023-2024 season. Now, as we're doing this, I talked about baseball, and you get all kinds of updates, and I see that there was a fight moved for Tyson Fury that I talked about yesterday. He was supposed to fight on December 23rd against Alexander Usyk. That got moved to February after Ngannou beat the hell out of him. And this fight will still be in Saudi Arabia, but it's being moved. You knew that was going to happen. Then Derek Lewis, one of my favorites, the Black Beast, he's fighting this weekend in Sao Paulo, Brazil, against Gelton Almeida. 5 rounds main event. He was arrested for reckless driving. Charged with reckless driving after allegedly doing 136 miles per hour in Lamborghini. Allegedly speeding at 136 miles per hour in a 50 mile per hour zone. Respect. That's school zone basically going 136. I mean, sometimes you got to get there to get the milk. That's all I'm saying. I mean, if the store's closing in 5 minutes and you gotta get there. I hear you, Derek. I mean, these cops don't get it sometimes. You're just told, hey, get there, and it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter the excuse. Could be going to save somebody, go 136 and a 50, but no, you're in the wrong. I'm being facetious here a little bit, but I mean, who doesn't love speeding every once in a while? I mean, come on. You only live once, but I'd rather live going fast, than live going slow, I guess. Maybe I'd rather die going fast than live going slow. I like that. TM, trademark that. I'd rather die going fast than live going slow. There we go. Maybe Paul Walker did that quoted that back in the day. But I think he had a pretty good life. I mean, him and Vin made a lot of money. But Derek Lewis arrested 5 days before his 5-round main event fight in Sao Paulo, Brazil, which is not best case scenario for the Black Beast because he's got a really tough opponent this weekend. But we'll talk about that more later in the week. But as we're talking about UFC, so we'll pivot as we do here. We just saw Ngannou fight Fury, and it was a big weekend for boxing, and now Ngannou, who's going to fight for the PFL, which is the major rival of the UFC, the AHL, if you will, but it's not even a competitor to the UFC, but Ngannou is their big fish. They also have Jake Paul under the regime, and he's apparently going to be fighting MMA in 2024, which I don't want to see at all, but I'm sure there'll be younger people that will want to see him do the battle in the smart cage. But the UFC sees Ngannou, and I think they've had some tough luck as of late. Obviously, they had Charles Oliveira pull out of his fight, and then they had John Jones tear his pec. So he's out for the fight next weekend in New York. So they had to scramble, and now it's Tom Aspinall and Sergey Pavlovich for the interim heavyweight title, which I think personally is a great fight. It's the co-main event, and I think it should remain the main event. Even though Alex Pereira and Yuri Prohaska is a great main event, that's still a great card in New York. I saw ticket prices. The average price to get on the floor was over $100,000. And that's not a typo. I read that earlier. Ticketmaster, over 100,000. So I think people were pissed because you don't get to see John Bones Jones and Stipe Miocic, the greatest of all time, and the greatest heavyweight of all time. But Aspinall and Pavlovich is going to be fantastic. And we'll preview that next week here on the program. But the UFC, you run into some tough luck, but you want to announce some fun cards, and they got a fun card coming up this weekend in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And they got the New York card, and they have a banger to end the year in Vegas. But on December 2nd, they have a fight night card. And how it works for the UFC, there's about a pay-per-view every month. And the rest of the cards you can basically see on TSN, UFC Fight Pass, for free. And on December 2nd, there's an event in Texas. And this event is shaping up to be an all-timer. Dana White comes out last night and announces 2 lightweight bangers for this event. The main event is Beneil Dariush, who was in a number 1 contenders fight with Charles Oliveira back in June in Vancouver. Ultimately was knocked out, lost that fight. But he's number 4 in the world. He's fighting Arman Tsarukyan. Arman's on a roll. He's won his last 6 fights. He looks really good. And a lot of prognosticators believe he is the biggest threat to Islam Makhachev in the lightweight division. Because of his wrestling prowess, because of his ability to land strikes, and just his overall talent. So you have Dariush, who's been pushing for a title shot for a long time. Dariush has beaten the likes of Tony Ferguson. He battled Charles Oliveira. He's been in the cage with Justin Gaethje. He's fought the best of the best, and he's won most of those wars. So you have a guy who's kind of trying to get to the mountaintop for the first time, and a guy in Arman who's ranked 8th, but with this win, he will go to number 4. And because there's already heat with him and Islam, he's called out Islam before saying, "You're scared of me. I know I can beat you." This has all the trappings to be a potential number 1 contenders fight. Huge ramifications for things to come moving forward. So that's the main event. Love it. Co-main event will also be 5 rounds between Dan Hooker, who last fought in July, beat the Tarantula, Jalen Turner, even though he broke his arm in the first round, still won the next 2 rounds, won the fight, broken arm, recovered from that, and will go to battle with Bobby King Green, who's already fought 3 times in 2023, and he's won all 3 fights, coming off a 30-second 5-round win, gets a main event on a fight night, knocks out an undefeated, surging guy who was looking great in Grant Dawson. 30 seconds, knocks him out. So you have number 11, Bobby Green, number 9, Dan Hooker, and these 2 guys. This could be a BMF fight, really. 2 of the toughest guys in the sport. 2 guys have been doing this a long time. Dan Hooker's been in some of the best wars. He had a fight with Dustin Poirier back in the day that was stuff of legends. 2 guys that just beat the living hell out of one another, that made no bones about it, weren't going to give up. And both guys that are just veterans, still trying to get to the top of the world. Dan Hooker, he's fought Islam. He fought Michael Chandler. He's had his ups and downs. Looking at a stretch, he fought Dustin, lost there. Then he lost to Michael Chandler not long after. Loses to Islam. Lost to Arnold Allen. But he's won his last 2 fights. Bobby Green's won his last 3. Full of confidence. Both guys have, nearly 50 fights apiece in their careers. And Bobby has finished his last 3 opponents. Jared Gordon, submitted Tony Ferguson, knocked out Grant Dawson. So these are 2 banger fights in the lightweight division. I like that they're doing 2 lightweight fights at the same time on the same card. Smart when they do this, but also on this event, Sean Brady, welterweight, returning, first fight of 2023, has not fought since last October when he lost to Bilal Muhammad. He's fighting Kelvin Gastelum, who's moving down from 185 to 170. Misha Tate is on this card. You have Rob Font welcoming former flyweight champion of the world Davison Figueiredo to the bantamweight division. You have Clay Guida, who's 41, still doing it in the UFC. Khalil Roundtree, Amzmat Murskanov. Murskanov's undefeated. Khalil Roundtree is just a beast. 2 fights this year, 2 knockouts. He's won his last 4 fights in a row, all via KO. So he's on a run. Murskanov has not lost as a pro. You get Cody Brundage fighting Zach Reese, who was just on the Contender Series on this card, which is fun. A Wellington Turman, who's on a losing streak, but he's looking to get back on track against Jared Gooden, another UFC vet. So this fight night event is awesome. In December, you're going to get this one in Texas. The next weekend, there's an event in, I believe it's Singapore. They haven't announced that main event yet. I would book the female title between Zhang Weili and somebody. You could go Yang Jianan and have 2 Chinese fighters, which would be awesome, and I think that would do big numbers. But you're going to get UFC Texas, then UFC China, and then the following weekend, you'll get UFC 296 to cap off 2023, the last event of 2023, the last pay-per-view, before we go into 2024, where the first pay-per-view of the year will be in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Back-to-back years with a pay-per-view, UFC pay-per-view in Canada, fresh off the one we got in Vancouver in June. And you can hope that that Alexander Volkanovski will still fight on that card against Ilia Topuria for the featherweight title. I don't know if he will after fighting in October, but it is Volk, and he's the most game guy in the world. He said he hates taking time off. And that Topuria fight is one of the spiciest ones on the calendar right now. Of any in the UFC, it's right up top with my bucket list of just fights to see. And also rumored yesterday, adding to that card, I assume this will be a co-main event, bantamweight division, former bantamweight champion of the world, Henry Cejudo, Olympic gold medalist, will go toe-to-toe with Aljamain Sterling's really best buddy, the guy who I think should be getting an opportunity at a title, who really should be the number 1 contender right now, and that's Merab Dvalishvili. Sterling beat Cejudo. Cejudo wants to fight Merab. The winner of that fight likely gets a title shot against Sean O'Malley, whoever's champion at the time. Because I don't know what they're doing with the bantamweight division. Who O'Malley's going to defend against first? Is it going to be, does Sterling get a rematch? Unlikely. Do they give it to Marlon Chito Vera? I don't think that makes the most sense. I don't think it's that interesting of a fight. Personally, I think it'll sell because it's O'Malley and Chito is popular. But I don't know if that'll be close. I think O'Malley's a lot better than Cheeto at this point. O'Malley's been more and more impressive. He wins the I didn't think he'd beat Sterling, and he did. So crazy things happen in the UFC, obviously. Sean Strickland and Sean O'Malley are champion at the same time. But a lot of stuff happening in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. In combat sports, I mean, Francis Ngannou might go in MMA with Deontay Wilder. And that's not interesting to me. Deontay Wilder is one of the best boxers in the world. His fights against Tyson Fury were some of the best heavyweight fights I've ever seen. Obviously, I wasn't around to see Muhammad Ali fight. I've seen clips. I've rewatched fights. But seeing Deontay Wilder drop Tyson Fury twice in the same fight and Fury go on to win, battle back, and win that stuff of a legend. Deontay Wilder's a boxer. He is going to get destroyed by Francis Ngannou. Francis proved he can box. I'm fine if Deontay Wilder and Francis want to go in the boxing ring and do the dance. That'll sell, and I'll actually buy it this time. I'll go and buy that event. Put it in Saudi Arabia, sell some tickets. That's where combat sports lives now, in Saudi Arabia. That's the home. Go down there, get the sheiks to dish out some money, and you move on with your life. But Deontay Wilder won't last a second. It's a different sport. I think he has less of a chance than I thought Francis did going in against Tyson Fury. Deontay Wilder's never thrown a leg kick in his life. He won't know what that's like to take. He doesn't have to worry about that when he's boxing. Now, I think why the PFL would even entertain this is because they have nobody for Francis to fight that anybody will give a shit about. That's a straight fact. I don't care if Ariel Helwani makes it seem interesting because he's up Francis's ass. There's nobody in the PFL that's interesting. If Derek Lewis would have left to go to the PFL for the money, it's interesting because Derek Lewis beat Ngannou back in the day in one of the worst fights in UFC history. No knockout. You think you're getting two of the best punchers of all time? No, just a crap fight. But there's no heavyweight. Okay, you're going to bring Junior Dos Santos, who's been caught using steroids the last couple of years, and he was cut from the UFC. And it's not like he left under his own volition. He was cut because he was getting knocked out. Okay. People really into that event in the PFL seeing that fight. There's no John Jones fight because he's in the UFC. So you have to pull out a boxer to make it interesting for Francis. I don't know. If I'm Francis, I get is with the PFL and he's going to get money from them. Not as much money I can't see as he made from boxing, because I think they said he made 10 plus million this weekend for that fight, and I think he's getting part of the pay-per-view revenue, which I think it did pretty well. And just the ticket sales itself in Saudi Arabia, I mean, Vince McMahon, The Undertaker, all the celebrities that were there for it. Kanye West, front row. If you're making 10 to 15 million per boxing event, and I think the next one he goes in, he'll make more than 10 million because he was so good in the first one, and the buildup will be there. And I think you can pair Francis with a really good boxer, put him with somebody. Let's say like a Lomachenko, who lost to Devin Haney back in May. He's a top-ranked guy. Or even if you go Joshua, you go Anthony Joshua and Francis Ngannou under the top rank umbrella. Eddie Hearn runs the event. You get Lomachenko, who's fighting a guy underneath him. Lomachenko wins that event. He gets a rematch with Devin Haney in 2024. Just something I think it can be a bigger event because you can put on better fights around it and maybe make the pay-per-view under 6 hours next time. Just a thought. But we'll see. But that's the combat sports update. There's a lot happening in combat sports. Never slows down. Things just keep chugging along. To the NFL. Lions beat the Raiders last night. Raiders did not cover the spread. 26-14. Game shouldn't have been that close because 7 of the Raiders' points came via pick 6 from Marcus Peters on an awful throw by Jared Goff. He did not play well last night. Their offense didn't look all that great. Jahmyr Gibbs had a hell of a game. They're using him. He had over 150 yards rushing. But Detroit won. That's the main thing for them. They are now ready to go. And they're 6-2, one of the best teams in the NFL. They head into a bye week. They got Donovan Peoples-Jones today from Cleveland, so they get some receiver help. Detroit's a good team. To me, they're in the NFC, so that helps them. I still believe San Francisco is better than Detroit when they're playing fully able. Eagles are better. Cowboys are better. So they're in the mix, but I don't think they're as good as the elite teams. But they're going to win their division easily. And they very well could still get top spot in the NFC because their schedule is not that tough down the stretch. So they can help themselves for sure. Home playoff game guaranteed, potentially more than one home playoff game for Detroit upcoming. Before we get to deadline moves, the Raiders are pathetic. They're 3-5. Jimmy Garoppolo is turning the ball over at an alarming rate. Hunter Renfrow has 8 catches in 8 games. Great slot receiver. And they don't trade him today. Davante Adams had 1 catch for 11 yards. Davante Adams, the guy who Aaron Rodgers had a great connection with. He's one of the best receivers in the NFL. 1 catch for 11 yards. How does that even happen? I don't know. The entire game. He asked for a trade weeks ago. The Raiders said no. They don't want to do it because he's under contract for multiple years. He then asked again after the game last night. They said no. The trade deadline's passed. He's still a Raider. This team's going nowhere, and he's stuck. He's in purgatory, and he's going to have to wait till the end of this year to see if he can get out. He made a decision to leave Green Bay, probably because he felt Aaron was going to leave eventually, which was true. Also, I think partly because he was sick of Aaron. And he wanted to go play with his partner in crime, Derek Carr, who was his quarterback at Fresno State. But that 1 year was a disaster. Derek Carr was sat the last 3 games of the year, and Derek Carr is now playing mediocre football in New Orleans. So he goes to play with Derek. He lost 1 year with, not even a year with Derek, and now he's playing with porn star Jimmy, and the team sucks. And he's seeing Tyreek Hill have 1,000 yards in the first 8 games, and A.J. Brown having a better season than Jerry Rice. At this, A.J. Brown has 6 straight games of at least 125 yards receiving, which is the most in NFL history, which is damn impressive, what he's putting on film. And Davante has 1 catch for 11 yards. And he's open, and they're just not giving him the football. Hunter Renfrow they keep, even though they said they want to trade or cut. The Chiefs could have used him. The Chiefs didn't get a wide receiver. That's my biggest flaw for today. At least the Eagles, who we talked yesterday, could have gotten another guy in the secondary. They at least got Byard last week. Chiefs go through the deadline, they get nobody. They got Mecole Hardman. Doesn't really count, in my opinion. They don't get anybody. They needed another threat. And Hunter Renfrow would have helped in the slot, something. But the Chiefs are staring at Valdez-Scantling, Kadarius Toney, Noah Gray, Jerick McKinnon. So I think they failed Patrick Mahomes today. I really do. His weapons aren't very good, and he's the best player in the NFL by a wide margin. And they did not help him. So shame on Brett Veach and the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, when it comes to the deadline, the biggest move today was San Francisco acquiring Chase Young from the Washington football team for a 2024 third-round pick. Chase Young's a former second overall pick in the draft. He'll be a free agent after this season. San Francisco can take him because he's not making that much money, and you can let him walk, and you give up a third-round pick. It's now the defense that struggled against Cincinnati. You have Nick Bosa, Chase Young, Javon Hargrave in the middle, Armstead, a lot of guys that can get to the quarterback, a lot of guys that can just wreak havoc. Just a scary front for the San Francisco 49ers. Nick Bosa, second overall pick. Chase Young, second overall pick. But I like the trade. What I don't like for Washington is you trade Chase Young, a better player, for a third rounder, and they traded Montez Sweat to the Chicago Bears for a second rounder. If Sweat went for a second, why couldn't you get a second from San Francisco? Were you so desperate to trade him? I think San Francisco would have caved. Couldn't have got a second, a conditional first for Chase Young. Washington gives up on two of the best pass rushers. Chase Young, Montez Sweat out of town. De'Aaron Payne, Jonathan Allen still in Washington, but completely new group. Getting draft picks, building for the future. That ownership group with Josh Harris and Magic Johnson and co. They did a lot over the last little while. Traded Chase Young, traded Montez Sweat, traded James Harden. They own the Sixers too, which we'll talk about at the end of the show. I get it for San Francisco. The Bears don't learn from their mistakes. This time last year, trade deadline day, the Chicago Bears traded a second-round pick to the Pittsburgh Steelers for Chase Claypool. And Chase Claypool played 6 games for the Bears, and he didn't have 10 catches. He's now a Miami Dolphin. He's a utility player. So you give a 2024 second for Montez Sweat, who needs a contract this summer. Montez Sweat's a solid player, but I would rather draft a pass rusher in the second round for cheap than pay Montez Sweat and give up a second rounder if that's the trade-off. I'm not doing it. I don't think it's a smart decision. Good player, but you can find better value. Second-round picks are so valuable, in particular in the NFL. It's more important than any other sport because second-rounders play, man. Will Levis is a second-round pick. He's going to be playing Thursday night for the Tennessee Titans, starting quarterback. The second-round picks playing in the league this year, there's so many on every team. You look around and go, that guy's a second-rounder. That was a day 2 player. He's pretty good. He's pretty good. But no, let's play. They got the most cap space going into next year. That's what they're lauding. And they hope to have 2 picks inside the top 5. Keep the draft picks. The amount of mistakes the Bears make, they need as many draft picks as they can get. A Bears second rounder, that's a good pick to have if you're the Washington football team. And also, if I'm the Bears, Ryan Poles is making this trade. Is he going to be your GM next year? Because Matt Eberflus is going to get fired. That's a guarantee. Are you firing Ryan Poles too? Because if you move on from Justin Fields, who he drafted, and you move on from Matt Eberflus, who he hired, and he hired the defensive coordinator who resigned because he was being investigated by the FBI for something. Still unclear exactly what it was, but he was being investigated, which doesn't sound good in my book. And, Ryan Poles traded for Chase Claypool, who lasted all of 6 games. So is Ryan Poles going to be the guy drafting the next quarterback and going through this again? Or is it going to be a new GM? Maybe if you're the McCaskey family in Chicago, you vetoed the trade and say, you know what? We're not really in on this. We don't think it's the best decision. It's not, no thanks, but they don't do that. Jacksonville acquired Ezra Cleveland from Minnesota. I like this. They needed an offensive line. It's their biggest weakness. Protect Trevor. Help the run game. Jacksonville's a good team. They're 6-2. Ezra Cleveland has been a really productive guard. He needs a new contract. I don't think Minnesota wanted to pay him. They don't have a whole lot of cap space. Jacksonville scoops him up. I like that. And Minnesota also made another move. They acquired Josh Dobbs from the Arizona Cardinals for a 7th rounder. Obviously, Minnesota lost Kirk D. Cousins for the season. They wanted to do something, looking for a quarterback. They don't pull the trigger for Jameis Winston. No Andy Dalton move, but Josh Dobbs, who was benched by Arizona. Clayton Tune or Kyler Murray is going to start this week. Josh Dobbs goes to Minnesota and likely will get an opportunity to play some more football down the stretch. Kevin O'Connell said that rookie Jaron Hall will start this coming weekend against the Atlanta Falcons. So it won't be Josh Dobbs right away. But I have to assume he'll be playing because the Minnesota Vikings will want to make the playoffs. I think Carson Wentz is still out there. He hasn't got a job all year. I would have made a call to him Monday morning. Clearly, teams don't think he's a good option or he's not good enough. Hasn't been playing all year, so he can't learn the system. But Josh Dobbs is now the number 2 quarterback for now, I guess, in Minnesota with Jaron Hall getting the start this week. But that was really it. I mean, the Chiefs got Mecole Hardman a couple weeks ago, but he's more of a special teams player. But I look at the Chiefs. I look at the Eagles. You could look at Miami and the offensive line because if that continues to implode, they're in big trouble. Cowboys don't do anything, but I said that yesterday. They wouldn't do anything because they never do. Buffalo, there was another trade. Buffalo got Rasul Douglas from the Packers. That was a smart trade for them. They needed a corner. They had lost, obviously, Tre'Davious White for the season. Kyer Elam, who was a first-rounder, who had not been very good, a first-rounder corner at the University of Florida. He hasn't had a very good start to his NFL career. So they scoop him up from Green Bay. Fresh start for him. Green Bay going nowhere this year. So NFL trade deadline, pretty quiet. Chase Young to San Francisco, the biggest splash, the biggest move. It's tough because quarterbacks need to learn a system, you need to figure it all out. But the biggest loser today, other than the Chiefs, is obviously Devontae Adams. I feel horrible for him. You need to get the hell out of Vegas, and they didn't let him leave. So many teams would have took him. Imagine Buffalo with Devontae Adams and Stephon Diggs. They could have pulled that off. Would have been tough for Kansas City. But boy, they could have used them. They got a bunch of number 3 wide receivers and an awesome banged up older tight end. So I worry about them moving forward. But rosters are really set now. Unless there's cuts and barring injuries, this is your team. The NFL heading to Germany. Oh, here's some news. Adam Schefter. The week 10, so it's week 9 coming. So a week from Sunday, Sunday night football game between the Jets and Raiders was not flexed out before today's deadline. So on November 12th, it'll be Jets at Raiders, Sunday night football. My God. Another Raiders primetime game, and the Jets are playing Monday night against the Chargers. So you're going to get Jets on a Monday night and then Jets on a Sunday against the Raiders. What are you doing, NFL? You can flex, and you choose not to. I'm going to look at that week and tell you some of the options. Week 10. Also that week, just get ready for this, Panthers-Bears on Thursday night. Woof. Browns-Ravens, 2 o'clock. There you go. Even without the groper, Deshaun Watson, that's a better game. 49ers-Jags. That's a good game. I'd prefer Giants-Cowboys, but they're not going to get that because Fox wants it. Lions-Chargers, 5:05. There you go. Put the Chargers, I don't even care, okay? Chargers are on too many prime times. I'd rather see the Packers, no, not Packers, Steelers. There's some bad games that day, don't get me wrong. I prefer Titans-Bucks. Give me some Will Levis and Baker Mayfield doing the NFC South showdown. Give me that other than the Raiders again. And the Jets with Zach Wilson after that thing you might call a football game against the Giants this weekend. That was so bad. But hey, for some reason, the NFL loves the Raiders. I don't get it. I don't think most people get it. But the Raiders, fan favorites. And to wrap today, let's go to the NBA. Pacers lost last night. First loss of the season. NBA in-season tournament starts on Friday. There's been some good basketball. Steph Curry's had an amazing start. Chris Paul in year something, 18, 20, coming off the bench for the Warriors, which is strange. The Raptors stink. They lost to Portland last night. Milwaukee's still working things out with Dame and Giannis Antetokounmpo. So you still figure, I mean, to me, the Celtics are obviously the best team. The Memphis Grizzlies, no Ja Morant for the first 25 games, start the season 0-4. They're in big trouble. Defending champ Denver Nuggets, they're 4-0. So things are happening. The biggest storyline you could argue was what's going to happen with James Harden. Wasn't there for training camp, then was showing up for training camp. But then he flew back, but wasn't allowed on the team charter because they wanted to see if he was in shape. Wasn't going on the road trip. So he hasn't played yet this year. He was on the bench Sunday night. But about 2 a.m. last night, Woj bomb, news breaks. The Philadelphia 76ers have traded James Harden to the Clippers, where he wanted to go all along. Clippers get James Harden and another veteran, PJ Tucker. Philly gets Nicholas Batum, Marcus Morris Sr., Robert Covington, KJ Martin, a 2026 2026 first-round pick that belongs to Oklahoma City, a 2028 unprotected first-round pick, 2 second-rounders, and a pick swap in 2029. So the Clippers basically have formed the 2014 All-Star team with Russell Westbrook and Paul George and Kawhi Leonard and James Harden. James Harden, who played with Westbrook in OKC when he was just baby James Harden coming off the bench. Then they got back together in Houston and apparently didn't like each other, didn't want to play with each other anymore because Harden said, get rid of him, bring in Chris Paul, and then they broke up. So he's back with him, and then you get Harden with those two and Kawhi and Paul George. I would love this if it was 2014, a decade ago. Now, I will say the Clippers will get Harden and Westbrook, who normally play a lot of games, Westbrook in particular. Leonard, George, they miss every other night. But those two guys like to play basketball. I don't think this makes them, they have the 5th best odds to win the title on FanDuel. I think that's crazy. I don't think they have the 5th best odds. I don't think they're better than Boston, than even the Lakers, Denver, obviously, Milwaukee. There's 4. Dallas, I'd put above the Clippers. There's 5. Do I think that they're going to make the conference finals? No. No, I don't, because I don't trust that team. This was a desperation move where they'd rather give up draft picks for the future when this team's not going to be any good so that they can keep Terrence Mann to try to win now. Which Terrence Mann's a good player. I'm not saying he's not a good player, because he is. But is he worth saving your franchise over? No. See, over saying, when we have our new arena and our team sucks for years on end, we have a home opener in the new stadium, we have nobody here that anybody wants to see. Oh, thankfully we kept Terrence Mann in the 2023-2024 season. I think Philly did very well here. Now, Philly's in some trouble because they don't have, I like Maxey a lot, and Joel Embiid is still one of the best players. He was the MVP of the league last year. And they do get help, but it's a lot of aging guys. Batum's been in the league for 100 years, and so is Covington. And Marcus Morris Sr. can be good when he wants to be good, but he's kind of an enigma in that way. So it's draft picks that can help you, but I think Joel Embiid, what does he give a shit about a 2026 first from OKC? But to be fair, Joel Embiid was giving nothing from James Harden because James Harden was not on the floor. These Clipper guys want to play. The Sixers are in a tough spot because they play they have to deal with the Celtics, but the East is easier than the West. The Clippers have a tougher trek to get to the NBA Finals. We've been over this. Milwaukee, Boston. After that in the East, who scares you? The Knicks? Spare me. If you go through it, the Suns should have better odds than the Clippers. Well, let's just Google this real quick. We're going to go on a little thing called FanDuel Sportsbook. And let's see here. NBA. They have better odds than the Lakers, than the Sixers, obviously, than Golden State. I don't even agree with that. Plus, you can get Denver Nuggets right now at plus 500 to win the title. Boston and Milwaukee with better odds. Don't mind that. Pelicans. To me, the Pelicans have a higher ceiling. They can stay healthy. My OKC Thunder. But you get Clippers, Lakers tomorrow night. Will James Harden make his debut? They get the Magic tonight. I could see a lot of those guys sitting out. then being available tomorrow night, ESPN, second game of a doubleheader, Clippers-Lakers, the Crypt, James Harden will say, I'm finally in the location that I wanted to be in all along. Wasn't Houston, wasn't Brooklyn, wasn't OKC, wasn't Philadelphia. It was LA with my buddy Russell Westbrook, who I hated for a period of time. And Paul George, an NBA champion, which I want to be, Kawhi Leonard. I don't have high hopes. I don't think this is going anywhere. And the Clippers with Steve Ballmer are desperate. They know it. And I think FanDuel are putting them higher on the odds because they're banking on idiots seeing the Clippers as a legitimate title threat, which they are not. Because you're not even better than the team that's playing in the same building as you. That's it for today's show. Lots more coming this week. Tonight, the college football playoff rankings will be announced. We'll talk about that. Should be back Thursday. No show tomorrow. We'll be back on Thursday. Preview the Thursday night game. Talk about the NHL over the next couple days. NBA, obviously, still have the World Series. Could be over by the time we chat next because Arizona's got to win one of the next two games or it's over. So have a great rest of your Tuesday. Happy Halloween, the last couple hours of it. And we'll see you on Thursday, right here on To The Point.